Welcome to the Bells and Balls podcast. All right, everyone, welcome to the show. This is our first episode. I hope you all will enjoy this conversation, this topic. For those that don't know, this is a podcast where we explore topics relating to relationships and also topics relating to sports as well. If you would like to follow us, you can certainly hit the subscribe button, hit the like button on this video, and then also you can follow us on social media. Follow us on bellsballspodcast on Twitter, and you can also follow us on bells_balls on Instagram. All right, with that said, let's go ahead and get this kicked off. You already know what the topic is, and interestingly enough, this has been a crazy topic that always seems to pop up in a lot of different ways when we talk about domestic violence. There are so many issues that you have out there, especially when it comes to celebrities and people who are just well known and how these issues get dealt with. I wanted to take this opportunity with this show to highlight some things that I don't think get discussed enough when it comes to domestic violence. And I wanted to really just break down what this all means and try to bring some context into this conversation. So first, let's just start out with some basic facts about domestic violence, because I think that in order for us to really highlight what this actually is, we need to just understand exactly how much of an impact this actually has in just our society as a whole. So, according to the National Center for Injury Prevention and Control, on average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States. During 1 year, this equates to more than 10 million women and men. All right, that last part I'm going to get into in a little bit. Also, this source also reports 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men have been victims of severe physical violence. That means beatings, burning, strangulation by an intimate partner in their lifetime. You think about that. Out of 4 women that you may know, 1 of them has dealt with some form of domestic violence, and out of 7 men you may know, 1 of them may have dealt with domestic violence in their lifetime. This is really disheartening, because there are so many things that come out of these situations and these scenarios, and I think there's so much seriousness that happens that I think sometimes as a society we don't take this serious enough. So I think this is important to break this down. So let's first of all, let's just talk about the psychological impacts of domestic violence. Well, first of all, what are the signs? So what do you, when you think about the impacts of domestic violence, what do you see when you see it? Well, there are 3 things that the psychology today pointed out are common signs of domestic violence. First of all, it's a pattern of violence. So not only is it just the abuse, but it's almost like a cycle of behavior. It's abuse, it's the apologies, it's the promise to stop, and it just goes on and on and on and on and on and on. The other thing is the isolation. You have people who are victims that don't get a chance to be around their families, their friends, people that are support systems that maybe can help them to escape these situations. Those individuals are put in a position where they're not able to get the support that they need because they're being isolated away from their support system. Also instilling guilt into the victim for their behavior. So, those that are in these situations that are looking for an escape, a lot of times there are signs where those individuals are being made the blame for those situations. So these are really serious concerns, really serious issues. And the reason why I'm pointing this out is because I think when we talk about this, we only look at this from one side, right? We only look at this really from the perspective of the woman being the victim. And we hear about that a lot. And absolutely, this is a huge concern for any woman to be involved with these situations. With that said, there is a contrast in the way our society views men who are in these situations. And there's a recent story that came out that I thought illustrated my point really perfectly. And for those that watch sports, there is a football player by the name of Dwayne Haskins. For those that don't know Dwayne Haskins, he actually was drafted by the Washington football team a couple years ago. He actually got released by the team last season. He's been picked up since by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's currently playing pretty well by most accounts in the preseason for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So he is an NFL quarterback, and he actually recently married a woman by the name of, I hope I'm getting her name right, Calabria Gondrazic. Try to say that 3 times in a row. Calabria Gondrazic. And those that may not know, Calabria Gondrazic actually has a sister that plays in the WNBA, and also has a father that played in the NBA as well. So the Gondrazic name is a pretty well-known name out there, especially in the sports world. Anyway, they got married earlier this year, and they actually had a domestic dispute in a hotel in Las Vegas a couple months ago. Basically, what ended up happening is they were on a trip to Las Vegas. Apparently, the wife, Gondrazic Haskins, that's her legal name. She has a hyphenated name. Was arrested on July 3rd after allegedly knocking out Dwayne Haskins' tooth during a fight. And by the way, Dwayne has denied that his tooth was actually knocked out. That's not here nor there. According to an arrest report, Haskins suffered injuries that were substantial in nature, including a split upper lip. After the incident had happened, Haskins told security guard at the hotel, "She hit me and cut my lip open." Haskins' injuries will most likely require dental work to repair the tooth that was knocked out of his mouth. Gondrazic Haskins faces felony charge of battery and domestic violence resulting in bodily harm and is scheduled to appear in court August 3rd, which that just happened a couple weeks ago. So what we're seeing here is we're seeing a situation, and Dwayne Haskins is not a small guy by any account. I think he's over 6 feet. I don't know exactly how much he weighs, but he's fairly larger than his wife. Okay, let's just put it like that. And so when you look at the two, the instant thought that seems to be out there is, okay, see, she hit him, so what? But as you can tell by the accounts of the report, she caused some harm, and I think that what happens in situations like this is we see a guy like Dwayne Haskins, who's much larger, and he's suffering through abuse, and it's dismissed quite a lot by our society. And I just had a chance to look through some social media posts about this particular story, and as you can see, looking at the screen, you'll see how different the reactions are. When it's coming to a situation where there's a woman that's being abused, what you're seeing is you're seeing someone that is, oh my goodness, this is horrible. This is a sad situation. This is bad. And yes, it is. It absolutely is. But then when you see a situation like this with Dwayne Haskins, there's people that are laughing, they're joking, and I'm concerned that our society is really downplaying this situation, because if you're Dwayne Haskins, you really are looking at this in two particular folds. If you are being abused and you're being hit by your wife, first of all, what do you do? First of all, if you hit her back, that's probably the end of your professional career. We've seen countless times throughout the years that we have players, actors, any type of person that has any kind of status, any man that is caught with abusing his wife or girlfriend or whoever, he's immediately just shunned by society. And so Dwayne Haskins, obviously, if he would have responded with physical violence towards her, he would have likely suffered a great deal of scrutiny through the public opinion. Without that, though, without responding, without reacting, what's the alternative? The alternative is people are making light of the situation. And that's the part that I'm really concerned about and really disturbed by, because this is a serious situation. There are men out there that have actually been killed because of domestic violence that has happened between them and their woman. And so I don't think that these are things that should be taken lightly. And I'm just wondering how we got to this point. How we got to this point where we are just so caught up in the way that we view this issue that we are almost desensitized when there's a situation like this, when a man is being attacked because he's this big, strong man, and we act as though a woman can't do harm to a man. And if it's a woman that's in that situation, it's a man that's doing abuse, and it's like the worst thing ever. And I think it shouldn't be that way. It should be, we should have the same reaction regardless, because there's a lot more, just as I highlighted, there's a lot more that goes on with domestic violence than just the physical nature of it. It's more than just physical. It's emotional. It's a spiritual attacks. There are things that go on that go far beyond just a bruise or a bump. And I think we need to really look at this and really understand that it's bigger than just this big football player being hit by his wife, who is much smaller than him. That's one part of it. The other part that I am also concerned about is we have a lot of false accusations that get put out there. And in particular, I think what happens, and there's a lot of different layers to this, right? So you can get accused of domestic violence or some type of abuse, right? I'm speaking really more so on the man side, because there is a much larger perception that men are the ones that typically, have these type of situations. And when they are accused, public opinion is, hey, they're guilty. They did this. They did this, and they should be shamed, and they should lose their job, and all those things. And I think what happens is we don't get the opportunity to really actually hear out what is happening. Like, did this happen in the manner that it was described? Did it actually happen? Is this false? And sometimes we get to a point where we find out that it's actually not true, and the damage is already done. These men actually don't get their reputation back because they're always going to be associated with these particular things. So there's a couple of examples that I have, different extremes, right? So first one is of course, Deshaun Watson, who, those that don't know, he is a NFL quarterback for the Houston Texans. He has basically been accused of some type of sexual activity with numerous masseuses that have come to various locations with him, and he's been accused of basically inappropriate behavior. Not so much to the point that he's gotten criminal charges as of yet. Those are ones that are still being threatened by some of these women's attorney, but uh, they haven't gotten to the point where charges have been filed. On the flip side, though, they are filing civil cases, and he is expected to have his day in court where he will have to answer for his interactions with these women. And so, with that, what we are looking at is a situation where we don't know what really happened, right? Especially without the criminal charges and the full investigation of exactly what went on in these situations. We don't really know if he truly indeed did this or not. But even if he was exonerated, let's just say he was, the damage is done, right? It's already clear as day that you're not going to be able to hear Deshaun Watson's name again without thinking about this situation and think about all these accusations and all these potential lawsuits that he is facing, because that's the way we view it as society. We view it from the standpoint of, hey, he's got to be guilty, or even if he isn't found guilty, you'll still associate his name with this. Another one that's a little less, I guess, a little bit less out there than Deshaun Watson, and that's the lieutenant governor of the state of Virginia currently, who's actually on his way out after losing the primary for the gubernatorial race for the Democratic primary, and that's Justin Fairfax. Justin Fairfax, if you may not remember, he was accused by two women. One, I believe, was in college where he was at Duke University, of being accused of abuse and actually assaulting her. And so the end result of that particular situation is nothing really came out of it. There wasn't any charges that came out of it. He proclaimed his innocence. Nothing really came out of it. But the end result is a lot of damage. He, of course, like I said, he ran for the primaries, and he ended up losing the Democratic primaries. And we'll see where his political career goes, but the damage has clearly been done on him and his career because of these accusations. The other example that I have that is far, far more extreme, that actually was proven to be a false accusation, is Brian Banks. So Brian Banks was a high school football player who was highly recruited, sought after football player that went to Long Beach Poly High School. And basically he was accused by a girl at the time that was his classmate. Her name is Juanetta Gibson, of raping her. He ended up being charged, and he went to trial, or he went to court, and ended up accepting a plea bargain because he was actually potentially facing 41 years in prison. And instead, he accepted a plea bargain, which included 5 years of prison, 5 years of parole, and he would have to register as a sex offender. Turns out, a couple years later, the alleged victim, Gibson, came out, recanted her story, stated that she admitted that the story wasn't true, and they had a hard time getting her on record stating that. Ultimately, through some help from one particular organization. Banks was able to have his charges taken back, but at that point he had already served 5 years in prison. And so at this point, when he got out, he was not, just some young kid that was in high school and ready to start his college career and go into the NFL. He was a 26-year-old that had spent years not playing football, and so his attempt to play in the NFL ended up failing, and he no longer was able to pursue the dream of being in the NFL. He was actually 26 years old when he was released from prison, and so you think about that for an NFL player, that's quite a few years, and especially if you haven't played at that level, it's very difficult to get back to that level. So the false accusation clearly did some significant damage to his life. He lost the opportunity to pursue his dream. And so that's an example of, clear false accusation that was made. And so it's challenging because you have these situations, you have these acts of violence where they're happening, they're serious, but then you have these situations where there are false accusations made and there is significant damage that's done, and you have people, men and women, that end up being hurt in some type of way. And so this is a very complicated topic, very complicated situation. But with that said, my question for you all is, and this is something we can discuss in the comments. Do you believe that those that are proven to be falsely accused, the accuser that made those accusations, do you believe they should be punished? I think, that's a question that there's been a lot of opinions about that. I've heard a lot of people say, well, you should charge them. You should charge them. The challenge that I think you will run into is if you start doing that, will that make more victims afraid to come forward with the potential they may somehow or another be viewed as lying? And then instead of getting their actual abuser punished, they're getting punished. There's a fine line there, and I'm curious what you all think. But yeah, this is a crazy topic. I just wanted to shed some light on just a couple things that I've seen. Appreciate you all listening to the video. There'll be a lot more coming up soon. So please continue to check us out. Again, follow us on social media, like, subscribe to the channel, and we'll check you next time on Bells and Balls Podcast.